idea through this campaign of putting them both together is, number one, to raise enough money for both organizations to make it through an entire year without having to sweat.
Paul Thorne is very familiar with Hatzoloh, both here and in Israel. He's vice president of intelligent event detection that allows corporate financial and security operations centers access to the world's quickest and most accurate critical event notifications. He's a retired Peel Regional Police Superintendent, was police commander of the Airport Division, Canada's largest and busiest airport, and designated National Incident Commander for the service, and worked in command centers for G820s and other events. Paul Thorne, welcome to JM in the AM.
Well, good morning, Malcolm, and thank you very much for having me join in this morning.
Are you kidding?
And again, thank you for supporting such a great cause this morning. How are you?
It's our pleasure to support this cause. It's also our pleasure to welcome you with your distinguished resume to the show. We talk about being familiar with Hatzoloh. It sounds like with your background, in general, you're familiar with emergency services. You're familiar with quick response. You're familiar with the importance of accurate critical event notifications. This is an organization that I'm sure speaks directly to you in terms of how important it is to the community.
Well, you're 100% right, and it's funny because having been involved in law enforcement in those areas for several years, it was only really a few short years ago I got to learn about Hatzoloh in a very odd way. I had the privilege of being out with a couple of friends, and one of them sitting at the table had what I thought was a police radio, and of course I looked over and said, "Why would you have a police radio?" He said, No, this is a Hatzoloh radio. I said, "Well, tell me more about that." So in the time period that we were together, of course, a radio call comes across. And of
I
course,
knew it.
This good friend of mine, David Stein, here in Toronto, he looked at me and says, "Well, do you want to go?" Well, growing up in the days of emergency on TV in the 70s, and I thought, wow, this is like Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto. And I said, absolutely, let's go. Should we take my car? Because, of course, at the time I had an off-duty police car.
Right.
And he goes, "Oh, absolutely not. I've got everything I need in my truck here." So off we went, and literally around the corner. So I was absolutely amazed at the efficiency and the ability that David had that I didn't know he had, because, of course, he's a business guy. He's not a surgeon. He's not a doctor. But I can tell you, Malcolm, what I think is pretty amazing here is that having been involved in many, many types of emergency responses in my career, and involving several organizations, some of which we pre-planned and some that were just exigent, I have to say that I was totally impressed by the professionalism and the caring and the understanding of the Hatzoloh response. So going to scenes myself as a first responder, you go in there with some sort of authority. You go in there expected by the public to be there to do certain things.
Right.
And certainly to me, what I saw with David and all those that responded, because they responded, they were caring, compassionate, they understood cultural issues and differences. And to me, the true mark of any volunteer organization is certainly the way in which volunteers interact with not just the end users, the victims, but city emergency response services and personnel.
Right.
So this to me was totally seamless. There was no doubt in my mind that every responder and volunteer, they respected one another, and they worked on each other's capabilities, which to me is paramount.
Yeah,
You don't want people in the way. You want people working together. And Hatzoloh trains their folks. They have great understanding. Just awesome work.
All those factors you mentioned are so critical. And Paul Thorne is with us live via telephone, charity.com/Toronto. Yummy mentioned to me in advance of this conversation, and we said it in your intro, that you're familiar with Hatzoloh and Israel. And I don't have to tell you that of all the things, and believe me, Hatzoloh and Israel, is to be admired for a variety of things. But probably the paramount area that they've built their reputation on has been speed and the way they deal with it. And I think that that's such an important aspect of this entire effort, because it seems like, based on what we've been told, and you've just confirmed it for us, that there's an amazing response time among the Toronto Hatzoloh volunteers that has to be admired. And it's not just the ability to mechanically get to a place. You need the motivation and determination to be somewhere in record time. And I'm sure that's one of the things that impresses you about this group.
It's funny you mentioned that. And of course, I'll give a shout out to Yummy, because it was Yummy and David. I had the great privilege of getting to go to the in the time, they were just about to open the new Hatzoloh in Jerusalem. And,
Right.
and later on, Yummy had me introduced to Eli Beer, which is a great man for setting it up. And yes, like when you look at just the Israeli response times, even Toronto's, they're 3 to 4 minutes. Unfortunately, first responders in city situations now, due to multiple reasons, they're not really able to respond in 3 minutes. And that's not knocking our local services. It's just that they're at a greater reach. But you're looking at Toronto alone with 65 active volunteers. Last year, they do 1,517 calls for service using 3,200 responders. Everybody has to remember, it's not just the guy and the folks in the car going to do the actual hands-on work. It's dispatch. It's the working through the call to make sure it's going to the right area. All of these people should be commended for the work they do, and they do it on top of what they do day in, day out, look after their families, look after their businesses, do multiple other charitable events. This is something that in my mind, it just floored me, because I know we all have busy days, but for folks to be able to engage like this, to take care of their community, and not turn a blind eye to anybody else, is just absolutely amazing. And you mentioned Israel, but we have to remember Canada, the U.S., Panama, France, the UK, South Africa. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it certainly as a first responder, it's a model that I like. It's a model I certainly believe could be transferred everywhere in this world, because everybody has to do more with less. And quite frankly, necessity has become the mother of invention, as we all know. A cliche, but it's very true.
Yep.
This to me is it's just awesome. I can't say enough about it. I can't say enough about what the folks are doing at Hatzoloh. Having seen calls, been on calls, and actually been to a dinner a couple of years ago, my hat goes off to these folks, because they certainly know what they're doing, and they're very prepared to do it.
Speaking with Paul Thorne, well, the only thing left for me to ask you is to help me encourage everybody who's listening to participate in this campaign. As you know, half of the charity campaign today is going to the Hatzoloh organization in Toronto. We anticipate great success. If you could just toss in a word encouraging people to give as generously as possible.
Absolutely. I've actually jotted it down here, and I don't think it does justice. My message to all your listeners today is that we never know when we might be on the other end of that phone call, where we require help, where our loved ones require the response of Hatzoloh for whatever reason. We can't quantify the number of lives they've saved already, because there's probably so many of them. But what you can do today is whatever you can give, and as generous as you can be today, I would urge everybody to take some time, even go to the website, phenomenal website, donate what you can, help everybody in our community be safe, and do that through providing the support Hatzoloh needs to respond to calls for service, because that's the only way we can do it. And with that being said, Malcolm, I really want to thank you again, and those in Toronto Hatzoloh, for asking me to speak today. David Stein knows this is from the heart, because I've had great experiences with you folks, and I believe it's an organization that needs support. So please, folks, dig in, support Hatzoloh, and hopefully one day you won't need them.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Have an awesome day, folks.
There he is, Paul Thorne. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to represent Hatzoloh in saying thank you to him, and saying God bless you to him for all his involvement and his great words about Hatzoloh.